Welcome back. We were talking earlier on the show about the terrible tragedy out in Tucson that unfortunately both sides of the political spectrum are trying to make some political hay out of. I think that's highly irresponsible. But there is a mood in this country today that lends itself to conditions that make it attractive for those in the political sphere to make some points out of their philosophy. I read this recent survey by the Pew Research Center. I might have put it in the column last week, I believe, and it says that they found in their polling a perfect storm of conditions associated with distrust in government, a dismal economy, an unhappy public, bitter partisan-based backlash, and epic discontent with Congress and with elected officials. We've seen that true in polls where only, 11 or 12% really have any confidence in what's happening in Washington, D.C., so a great deal of bitterness. And sometimes that can spin off into some various dangerous circumstances that we've seen in this country. I don't think this is a case. This is a mentally deranged young man who had a series of problems. The failure here, there's a series of failures, but one of the failures is that the system in place in Arizona and probably in every state in this country does not bode well for those who seek out mental help, who cry out for mental health. We release prisoners every day in this country who have mental problems. They have emotional problems that can lead to much more serious problems. When they get out of prison, they have no job, no training. They're marked for life, and yet we do nothing to give them the direction they need from the mental health side. In my home state of Louisiana right now, they're talking about massive budget cuts in the mental health area, as much as $40–50 million that we're going towards mental health treatment. Well, when you don't make that a priority, and I understand that times are tough and that states all over the country are seeing huge shortages, but when you set priorities, when we see the situation in Tucson, shouldn't it challenge us to say we've got some huge problems with people emotionally that we're not treating? They have some mental issues. We've got to find a way to deal with it. Look, I don't have the answer, but we're not having that debate. That's my concern. We're not having that debate. Where do you draw the line? At what point do you take someone's basic rights away to carry a gun, number one, just because they've had a few emotional problems? Is that in itself, with no challenges to them, enough to take the gun away? Probably is in many instances. When does government step in to commit someone because they need? That's a real murky area in terms of violating their basic civil rights that you have as an American citizen. So there's some tough issues out there that need to be addressed that are not being addressed, that I think override all the political rhetoric going on right now. Of course, it was irresponsible of Sarah Palin to put the bullseye on 20 congressmen. That's in this crazy world, that could lead to some difficult choices and some people over the deep end doing some crazy things. I think you'll see that come down off our website. And you can find examples on the left where there was irresponsible rhetoric that could lead to some real violence, some real difficult situations. Why do we have such heated up rhetoric? I know we say, well, there's always confrontations. We go back to George Washington, John Adams. We go back to Abraham Lincoln being shot, who was hated, political agendas to John Kennedy, and a lot of violence in politics. I understand that, but at least we had more civil tones just a few years back where Democrats and Republicans alike could argue and fight all day long. Then when the evening came around, they'd sit back and loosen their tie and drink a cold beer, have a cup of coffee, and get to know each other, knew their families. You don't see that now in Washington. You don't see that now in our state capitals. In my home of Louisiana, when I was a legislator, Democrats and Republicans alike would stay for the week and bring their families down and barbecue at night. You don't see that in my home state and in most states in this day and age. So very difficult, tough choices to make. Invariably, it's going to cost some money. You look at this young man's reading list. I was looking over the fact that his favorite books he put on his YouTube site were Animal House, Brave New World, Mein Kampf, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. A number of books that summed him up as an individual who was concerned about authority, higher authority, dealing him a blow, taking away his rights, being unfair to him. The quote, I put this in my column this week, one of his books was To Kill a Mockingbird. You wondered, why would that be put into the list of government intervention and government being very heavy-handed? I'll give you a quote from To Killing Mockingbird. It's one of my favorite books, written by Harper Lee, who lives down in my part of the country over in Alabama. He was out of his mind, said Atticus. Don't like to contradict you, Mr. Finch. Wasn't crazy. Mean as hell. Low-down skunk with enough liquor in him to make him brave enough to kill children. Well, I don't know about the liquor, but Harper Lee got it right. This guy was mentally deranged and had some huge problems. He was mean as hell, and he did a great deal of damage that should not be allowed to happen in this country today. So a little common sense solution that we talk about in this show. Let's talk about the real problem, what we do with people who are mentally incompetent. How do we keep control so this violence doesn't happen again? I'll be right back.